Uh, Hello, my name is Michael Perez. I will be doing a wiki analysis on the topic Jodo Shu, which is a branch of Pure Land Buddhism for my Religion 238 class on Korea and Japan for Dr. Hammerstrom. Um, as we go through the wiki article, wiki article's organization, it looks well put together. On the right side, you can see that it talks about, or it gives links to the basic concepts and other links, basically a rabbit hole of what Buddhism is all about, its history, where it's from, its practices, and like where or how Buddhism has impacted the world and who's actively practicing it and where. Um, as you look to the left, it has a table of contents, the history, the founder of Jodoshu, the doctrine, subsects, where it possibly exists, its references, sources, and something to note that we can talk about in a little bit is that it doesn't have any further readings, which gives me a little bit gives me something to think about whether or not this site is reputable or has enough sources as a whole. Um, as we go down further, it does use in-text citations um, for all eight references. Um, it does show pictures, um, so it does show good examples, general ideas um, where it possibly exists, like in Japan, obviously, Hawaii, United States, um, etc. I think that this article, yeah, organization is I think it's uh, well put together. It's neat, and doesn't really have anything to really dislike about in its overall organization. But as we get to references, something that is very important, when we click on the first one, it sends us actually to a error link, which is very important to think about because it actually in-text cites the first reference, which is something that is questionable because uh, if you click on the reference to where they even got the statement from or put the statement from, it's nowhere to be found or fact checked. So that makes it less reputable, makes this site not really that, like I said, reputable. Um, as we move on to the second source, it actually sends us to a website, a .org or organization for Jodoshu. At first glance, I thought this was going to be kind of a random article, very brief overview of Jodoshu and hone in the founder of Jodoshu. So this kind of it was questionable at first, but as I went through it, it actually began to it referenced other books. It actually has a list of books that it references that you can actually buy on Amazon. Um, who and their publishers, or they actually do have a publisher, which is Jodoshu Press. Uh, as we go down the list, they give more books. So yeah, this made it made me more confident in the site and being a better source than what it appeared to be. And something interesting to note that they actually had a contact info and an address. They actually gave Tokyo office, Jodoshu headquarters in Tokyo, Japan. So uh, And this website does have a copyright, so maybe that's not really that notable, but just something to note. It made the overall site, this website source in general, more reputable. So as we move down the list, they do in fact have reference 3, 7, and 8 do reference a book, the transverse the Pure Land, and this is something that you can buy on Amazon, and the author is Jonathan Watts. It's published by Jodoshu Press. Um, Something to note that this it was kind of hard to determine whether or not this was like entirely reputable and a good source, but as I looked up the authors, it was also kind of hard to find information about the authors. But something that I found is that Jonathan Watts actually did graduate with his bachelor's in religious studies from Princeton University, and he is a researcher in Jodoshu at the Jodoshu Institute in Tokyo. And the other author for this book, Yoshiharu Tamatsu, is actually he's actually a ordained Buddhist priest in Japan, and he also he got his master's in theological studies at Harvard University Divinity School, and he was actively, you know, he's actively a researcher of um, just Jodoshu in general. So that's something to think about when I was looking for whether or not that this book was something of a good source to use. And another book that I happened to come across was The Wrath of the Shore, Honen the Way of Pure Land. That was referenced um, in this. I thought that was another source that seemed rather reputable because it also was from Jodoshu. But something that I noted that is the author is very hard to. It was hard to find information on him, and I couldn't really get anything from that. So that's something to note as well. Um, so as we move on uh, to reference 5, this didn't really. It sent me a link to the same thing as reference 1. Again, it seems it seems reputable, but not an entirely good source to use. Um, but as we move on to reference 6, it wasn't really that great. It actually sent us to an error page, just like reference 2. Um, so made the website less reputable. And 7 and 8, again, was using the same book as reference 3. So, in fact, overall, the sources they used were technically two good sources, I would say, is the books, and one not really great source, but um, was enough to, I guess, get general information onto the wiki page. And something to note that was kind of biased was that a lot of this information, or actually all the information, was generally just from Jodoshu, like the publications and Jodoshu Research Institute in Tokyo, Japan. So that was something that was biased in a sense that this information could be not entirely correct. And uh, one thing that I've also noted, like a statement that I wanted to fact check, was this statement on whether or not that Honen, the founder, was exiled to another island, and he and that he was uh, that he supported women in practicing this Buddhism or Jodoshu in general. And so when I fact checked it with two primary sources, it did talk about Honen being banished, but it didn't really talk about like some of the controversial ideas during that time about women being it's very important, being able to practice it. I didn't really find anything on that, but what was correct was stuff on him being exiled in general. Um, and when I go on to so when I go on to whether or not that uh, this is the references were sufficient enough, I really don't think this was sufficient enough, and I think they could have had more. But in general, I think that this site is very it has a very good generalization and straightforward. It seemed factual and it had very good. It had yeah, it was straightforward and uh, other than the bias of having most of the sources coming from one kind of area, it seemed like it wasn't entirely not reputable. And some of the biases when I was looking at it, yeah, it didn't really have any controversies in the last thing that it, there was talked about was in 2016. There wasn't really much changes to it, besides maybe some talking about some dead error links when you were doing all the source checks. And yeah, the last edit was in 2017. So overall, I think that the quality of this article, the organization was set up pretty well, but I think it just didn't really have enough information or resources to be a good, reliable, reputable source to be actually using. But general facts, I think it was well put together. Thank you.